When you're a part-time student at the university, I think sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to actually embed yourself within the student way of life, because your time is so difficult to prioritise when you're working full-time as well. It was good that I had one day a week that was designated for my PhD studies, but within that you have to access all of the graduate school programmes that they put on, the courses that they put on. I did access the graduate school preparation for your Viva, which was very, very useful, and I also accessed the online short films that they do, similar to the one that we're doing now, which I found were very useful because it took me through the actual process of the Viva, how to help prepare for it and everything. The other way that I prepared was my two supervisors fired questions at me that they thought may be raised, but it's very difficult to second guess what your examiners may come up with. And then finally, a professor from within the school did a mock Viva with me on a one-to-one, but just on the literature chapter, which gave me a good insight actually into some of the ways that things could be clarified at a Viva that you put down within your thesis. The professor that undertook the mock Viva with me was from a social sciences background, and particularly identified the areas within teenage pregnancy that may have an impact on birth outcomes, as in deprivation, personal circumstances, and she was particularly interested in that part of my literature review and how I'd identified things that I wanted to include within the thesis and excluded some aspects because I couldn't cover everything within the thesis. And I think that was quite an insight into perhaps how external or my internal examiner may sort of interpret the literature review and why I'd chosen certain areas. Yes, I think it's quite important that you are able to justify why you have chosen to include certain aspects, and not to be afraid to be able to also justify why you couldn't include absolutely everything. My main problem with my thesis was I had 7 outcomes that I was actually examining, and therefore to do an in-depth literature review in all of those areas would not have been contained within the 100,000 words limit. And that was something in reflection, probably I shouldn't have tried to have covered quite so much in the thesis, but it's always that you want the answers to these things because that's why you're interested in doing it. I think my two supervisors that I had throughout my PhD, they helped me to prepare for the academic challenge by asking me to justify my decisions. They provided guidance, but if I had a particular aspect that I wanted to cover within my thesis, I had to justify to them, to my two supervisors, throughout the process of completing my PhD, why I had chosen that approach, why I felt that approach was most appropriate, and be able to justify my decisions around there. And I felt that that enabled me to take control of my thesis, and that my thesis was my work, rather than being just told what to do. My thesis was what I wanted to do, but still had the rigour of being a PhD thesis.